Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. My name is Rajesh Lake and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Manoj Pathak.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र के ताजा अंक में आपका स्वागत है। हमेशा की तरह हम अर्थ जगत, शेयर बाजार और कारोबार से संबंधित ताजा खबरों को लेकर हाजिर हैं। हमारे साथ स्टूडियो में खबरों पर चर्चा के लिए आमंत्रित हैं वरिष्ठ आर्थिक पत्रकार उदयन रे। उदयन नमस्कार, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत है।
धन्यवाद मनोज, थैंक्स।
आइए शुरुआत करते हैं अंग्रेजी में हेडलाइंस से, जिसे लेकर मौजूद हैं राजेश लेख।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds delegation-level talks with his Danish counterpart Mette Frederiksen in Copenhagen, ink several agreements. LIC to launch its IPO for general public tomorrow. Asian and European stocks trade mixed, US stocks log gains, and Brent crude prices hover around $107 a barrel.
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी और उनके डेनमार्क के समकक्ष मेटे फेडरिक्सन के बीच कोपेनहेगन में प्रतिनिधि मंडल स्तर की हुई बातचीत, कई समझौतों पर हुए हस्ताक्षर। LIC का IPO आम लोगों के लिए कल से खुलेगा। अमेरिकी शेयर बाजार में कल हुई लिवाली, प्रमुख सूचकांक ऊपर आए, जबकि एशिया और यूरोप के शेयर बाजारों में आज दिख रहा मिला जुला रुख। और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजारों में ब्रेंट कच्चे तेल की कीमत $160 प्रति बैरल के आसपास पहुंची।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi today held delegation-level talks with Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen in Copenhagen. Both leaders reviewed the progress of the Green Strategic Partnership, which was the first of its kind arrangement between India and Denmark. Mr. Modi reached Denmark's capital this afternoon for the second leg of his visit to the three European nation tour. After holding the delegation-level talks, the Prime Minister, in his address at the joint press meet, said that both countries share values like democracy, freedom of expression and the rule of law, and together they have several complementary strengths. Earlier, several agreements were inked between the two countries in various sectors. These include a letter of intent between the Ministry of Jal Shakti and Danish Ministry of Environment on cooperation in safe and secure water, including a center of excellence and smart laboratories in India. Later this evening, Mr. Modi will attend an India-Denmark Business Forum and also address members of the Indian diaspora. Udayan, what are the areas, or would you like to elaborate on the areas of cooperation between India and Denmark?
Well, of course, there are, as you mentioned, there's a center of excellence that's being talked about. But Rajesh, it's primarily from what the news is coming, it seems to be the area of environment, and especially globally there is this whole commitment that every country is giving in terms of reducing emissions and pollution and things like that. Now, for a country like India, it will obviously need the technical expertise because it has made some very ambitious commitments, and that's where the whole thing is coming into. Apart from that, Rajesh, it's worth pointing out that everybody's talking about supply chain resilience. Now, India is trying to be part of global supply chains where it's part of a globally produced product. Say something is being produced in one particular country and something is in another. India wants to be part of that chain where the final output is coming in. Now, to do that, you sometimes need technical expertise, you need to have understanding. And Rajesh, the point is environmentally aligned, environmentally correct, shall we say, green sort of manufacturing, green kind of production and things like that, those compliances, they are becoming global benchmarks. And for India to be right aligned to that, these kind of cooperations would be required.
It is putting a lot of emphasis on safe and secure water, and that's why the Ministry of Jal Shakti has come into play, and they are forging a program perhaps in the days to come, wherein the Danish Ministry of Environment will come and maybe guide us and lead us into safe and secure water for our villages.
Oh, absolutely. And this is, as we know, Rajesh, our water bodies, and a lot of them have this effluent sort of problems. There are a lot of water bodies which have got dried up. So those things, there probably needs to be an overall strategy, and government is obviously working on it. But these are the kind of technical sort of expertise that you would need, because simply if you are not environmentally compliant, that is something which will not get you in the good books or in the books of advanced, or shall we say more developed countries in the West. So if you want to be part of that, not only there, even in East Asia, we would probably need to be more environmentally aligned.
मतलब हम उदयन आपका ध्यान आकृष्ट करना चाहेंगे एक और विकसित देश, कह लें कि विकसित देश यानी जो औद्योगिक रूप से अति विकसित देश हैं, दूसरी ओर भारत जैसा विकासशील देश, वहां पर जो हरित ऊर्जा को लेकर चर्चा चल रही है और भारत और डेनमार्क के बीच में कह लें कि एक नई किस्म की व्यवस्था बनने जा रही है, उसमें हरित ऊर्जा की संभावना कितनी देख रहे हैं और खासतौर से भारत को क्या क्या लाभ मिल सकता है उस फील्ड में डेनमार्क के साथ सहयोग से?
देखिए, ये सिर्फ हरित ऊर्जा और हरित जो व्यवसाय है, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी और हरित व्यवसाय, ग्रीन बिजनेस, वो सिर्फ आप देखेंगे कि प्रधानमंत्री की जो दौरा है सिर्फ डेनमार्क के साथ ही नहीं है, वो जर्मनी और दूसरी जगह में भी होगी, क्योंकि यूरोप में ये जो प्रैक्टिस है ये काफी विकसित है और आपको वहां से ही ये लेना पड़ेगा, वहां से आपको वो एक्सपर्टीज, तकनीकी एक्सपर्टीज जो है, स्पेशलाइजेशन, उसका फायदा उठाना है। तो ये जब तक आप हाथ नहीं मिलाएंगे, तब तक आप अगर खुद करने जाएंगे आपको वक्त लगेगा, और तब तक आप जिस तरीके से आप ट्रांजिशन करना चाहते हैं, जो आपकी आकांक्षाएं हैं, वो आप वो पूर्ण नहीं कर पाएंगे। तो मेरे ख्याल से ये हरित जो ऊर्जा के बारे में बात करें, मुझे लगता है शायद ये जर्मनी में ज्यादा बातचीत हुई होगी। यहाँ पे पानी, जल से जुड़ी हुई जो बातें हैं वहाँ पे शायद ज्यादा रही होंगी।
Since you mentioned about what happened in Germany, let's tell our listeners that yesterday Prime Minister Modi and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz co-chaired the 6th edition of the India-Germany Intergovernmental Consultations, IGC, in Berlin. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi held bilateral discussions with the German Chancellor. Both leaders signed the joint declaration of intent establishing the Green Sustainable Development Partnership. Both leaders also highlighted their commitment to an economic recovery from the COVID pandemic. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz invited Prime Minister Modi for G7 summit to be held in Germany. Now, how will this cooperation between various countries, particularly Germany and Denmark, come into play to take forward the green strategic partnership that the leaders are talking about?
One is, of course, the expertise. When you get that expertise, because see, somebody who's Rajesh, somebody who's wanting to do business with, and say, an Indian company. Now, unless it is adhering to certain environmental norms, which this is not something new, everybody knows that. If you are not adhering to certain environmental norms, then doing business becomes that much difficult. It's worth pointing out that our emission norms, car emission norms, we are following European emission norms. I mean, they are sort of a kind of benchmark for us, or they're influencing us. So those things we are already getting influenced by them, and when you're producing those things for markets like those in Europe, you would obviously need to be aligned. You need to have those quality standards, environmental standards. They check, and it's nothing new, Rajesh. Like in the pharma sector, you have our companies have to be FDA compliant if they want to export active pharmaceutical ingredients to the US. So it's not as if it's something new, but it's because we are ambitious now. We want to do many more things, be part of those chains, so that we get that technology, that skilled manpower, and we move up the value chain as far as manufacturing in India is concerned for the Indian consumers. Also for we make globally part of products that are being made globally. If you want to do that, then across the spectrum we would need that expertise, and we need to do it fast. Instead of us reinventing the wheel, this is probably what, this is my guess, that's what the government is trying to do. Collapse getting the technical know-how very quickly. And of course, Rajesh, as we know, that countries are trying to get an alternative source apart from China. So, and countries like India, Vietnam and others, Malaysia and others, all kinds of countries, they're vying to be part of that. So it's not as if we haven't gained, we have started making those gains, but we really want to drive home that advantage.
Okay, Chancellor Scholz and Prime Minister Modi also talked about economic recovery due to from the COVID pandemic. So what kind of cooperation is going to be on the anvil now, so that the trade between the two countries happen and both the countries come out of the recovery that is so required in our respective countries?
I think it would primarily be access to markets, I suspect. This is just my suspicion. But I guess access to markets, there are areas that you would want to give access. Mutually, you're opening up each country with the other. We have seen Australia, we've seen with the UK. You can expect some of these understandings to happen, where so that, these countries, we give each the other country some access. In other cases, it would be access to technology. It could be access for our professionals, technical professionals who are allowed to go in there. Their professionals coming here. So sometimes, you need all this opening up goods, markets for goods and services. For us, we have technically qualified people. So I suspect all this would be happening. And then, of course, this whole transition that globally we are trying to make from fossil fuels into green energy, that is something that we would want to do. If we can manufacture well green sort of say vehicles or whatever you call it, then India can become a manufacturing hub. Okay. So India is already exporting automobiles. For large companies are doing that. So we could get into that space as well. I would reckon that.
हरित ऊर्जा के क्षेत्र में या कह लें कि जो नवीकरणीय ऊर्जा है उसके क्षेत्र में हमारी अभी की क्या स्थिति है और आने वाले दिनों में क्या संभावनाएं लग रही हैं आपको?
देखिए, कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन तो ये है मनोज की अभी हमें जरूरत फॉसिल फ्यूल्स की पड़ रही है, क्योंकि अब तेल के दाम इतने ऊपर हैं जी। पर लॉन्ग टर्म तो आप अगर 5-6 साल 10 साल की तरफ देखते हैं तो हमें हरित ऊर्जा की तरफ जाना ही पड़ेगा। तो उसमें तो ये एक असमंजस की स्थिति है, क्योंकि आपको आपूर्ति को, क्योंकि जो यूक्रेन में जो क्राइसिस चल रही है, संघर्ष चल रहा है, उसके वजह से काफी डिस्टर्ब हो गया। इसके अलावा कोविड रिकवरी की वजह से वो हो गया। तो ये एक असमंजस की स्थिति है जहां पे निवेश दोनों जगह करनी पड़ रही है। जहां तक हमारी स्थिति है, जैसे कि हम जानते हैं कि चीन जो है इसमें बहुत आगे है। अगर हमें दूसरे देशों इनके साथ रहना है, इनके साथ प्रतिस्पर्धा करना है, इनके साथ हमें बिजनेस के ताल्लुकात रखने हैं, तो हमें अपने स्तर को ऊपर लेके जाना पड़ेगा। तो चीन इसमें कई इलाकों में लीडर है और हमें वो जो फासला है उसको कवर करना है। और यहाँ पे जब हम एग्रीमेंट्स करते हैं दूसरे देशों के, पश्चिमी देशों के साथ, इन चीजों के बारे में ख्याल रखें। वो जो गैप है उसको हमें जल्दी से कम करना ही है.
Moving on, Life Insurance Corporation LIC will launch its much-awaited initial public offering IPO for general public starting tomorrow until the 9th of this month. LIC, the country's largest life insurer, is selling over 22.13 crore shares in the price band of between 902 and 949 rupees per share. Investors can bid for a minimum of 15 equity shares and in multiples of 15 equity shares thereafter. LIC policyholders will get a 60 rupees per share discount and retail employees and anchor investors will get a 45 rupees discount. The IPO will be listed on stock exchanges on the 17th of this month. This IPO will be the biggest in the country till date. The government is looking to divest 3.5% stake of LIC and total IPO value is set at 21,000 crore rupees.
जीवन बीमा निगम का सार्वजनिक निर्गम यानी आईपीओ कल से आम लोगों के लिए मिलना शुरू हो जाएगा और इस महीने की 9 तारीख तक आम लोग इसकी खरीदारी कर सकेंगे. इसके लिए अपना आवेदन भर पाएंगे. 22 करोड़ 13 लाख शेयर 902 रुपए से लेकर 949 रुपए मूल्य वर्ग में प्रति शेयर की दर से उपलब्ध होंगे. निवेशक कम से कम 15 शेयरों के लिए अपनी बोली लगा सकते हैं, अपना आवेदन दे सकते हैं. एलआईसी के जो बीमा धारक हैं उनको 60 रुपए की छूट प्रति शेयर दी जाएगी और यदि कर्मचारी हैं तो उन्हें 45 रुपए का डिस्काउंट दिया जाएगा. 17 मई को यानी इसी महीने की 17 तारीख को यह सूचीबद्ध स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में हो जाएगा. यहां पर हम एक सहज सा सवाल पूछना चाह रहे हैं. बहुत सारे जो कह लें कि लोग हैं उत्साहित हो रहे हैं इस शेयर को खरीदने के लेकर. तो एक आम आदमी जिसने आज तक कोई खाता नहीं खोला वह यदि निवेश करना चाहे तो उसकी क्या क्या आवश्यकताएं होंगी एलआईसी के शेयर खरीदने के लिए?
देखिए, जो भी जो डीमैट अकाउंट खोलना है, 3-in-1 अकाउंट खोलना होता है, वो सब आपको करना है. बाकी एलआईसी ने कुछ जो डिस्काउंट है उसके लिए कुछ शर्तें रखी हैं, वो आप जाके साइट से देख सकते हैं. तो वो तो पहले ही कर लेना चाहिए था, तो वो आप कर सकते हैं. पर रही बात आईपीओ में, जरूरी नहीं है कि आप आईपीओ में ही निवेश करें, क्योंकि आईपीओ में अगर आप निवेश कर रहे हैं इसका मतलब वो देखिए आईपीओ ज्यादातर कई लोग जो आईपीओ में तभी आप निवेश करें मेरे हिसाब से जब आप लिस्टिंग होने में जब वो सूचीबद्ध हो जाता है तब आप बेचने के बारे में सोच रहे हैं. पर एलआईसी का शेयर ऐसा शेयर है मेरे हिसाब से कि जिसको आपको होल्ड करना चाहिए. कारण क्या है? एलआईसी के पास 66% मार्केट शेयर है. ये सबसे न्यूनतम स्तर है. ये तब हो रहा है जब कोविड की स्थिति की वजह से लाइफ इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज पे असर पड़ा, उनकी सेल्स पे असर पड़ा है. एलआईसी ज्यादातर फिजिकल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन करता है, उनके सबसे ज्यादा डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर्स हैं हमारे देश में. और एलआईसी के पास अगर 66% बिजनेस मार्केट शेयर है, उसका जो अगला कंपनी है जिसका मार्केट शेयर वो 7% या 8% के आसपास है. एलआईसी वर्सेस रेस्ट है. आप सोचिए बाकी जितने कंपनी हैं उनके पास 33% मार्केट शेयर है और एलआईसी को 66% है और कम लाइफ इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज नहीं है. इसका मतलब जितने बाकी लाइफ इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज हैं अगर वो 3 फुट के हैं और तो फिर एलआईसी 6 फुट का है, तो आपको डबल बाकी इंडस्ट्री का डबल साइज है. दूसरी बात है हमारे देश में लाइफ इंश्योरेंस की जो पेनिट्रेशन है वो 3% जीडीपी के आसपास है, जो कि बहुत ही कम है. हमारे देश में बहुत ज्यादा कम है. अगर लाइफ इंश्योरेंस बढ़ता है क्योंकि लोगों की आय बढ़ेगी तो लाइफ इंश्योरेंस बढ़ेगा. तो कैप्चर कौन करेगा? जिसके पास जो अपने सबसे निकटतम प्रतिद्वंदी से 10 गुना ज्यादा बड़ा है, क्या वो कैप्चर करेगा या कोई और होगा? तो ये अगर आप ये कुछ 2-3 प्रश्न अगर पूछते हैं तो आईपीओ में अगर आप खरीद रहे हैं तो फिर आपको होल्ड करना चाहिए. तो आईपीओ में लिस्टिंग गेन के लिए ना खरीदें, इसको आपको लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए खरीदें,
कंपनी में निवेश के लिए.
बिल्कुल. और आप अगर देखें कई लोगों का कहना है कि फर्स्ट ईयर प्रीमियम में उनका हिस्सेदारी कम होती जा रही है. आप देखिए ना पॉलिसीज में कितना है, पॉलिसीज अगर जो बेची जा रही है उसमें 3/4 पॉलिसी कभी भी किसी साल बेची जाती है, LIC बेचता है। इतना डोमिनेशन तो किसी बिजनेस में नहीं है, और ये पब्लिक सेक्टर उपक्रम है और ये सरकार का बैकिंग है। आप देश में अगर लाइफ इंश्योरेंस खरीदने के बारे में सोचते हैं तो आप LIC बोला जाता है, तो सिनोनिमस है। तो ये अगर खरीद रहे हैं, इसका मतलब ये मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ, जरूरी नहीं है आप IPO में खरीदें, लिस्टिंग के बाद भी खरीद सकते हैं, पर अगर खरीदें तो बने रहें, क्योंकि वो लिस्टिंग गेन लेने के लिए फिर तो ऐसी बात होगी कि आपने सोना आपको मिल गया कहीं पे और आपने एकदम से बेच दिया जी, और वो अगर आप 10 साल रखते और फिर बेचते फिर तो आपको फायदा होता। तो ये इतना बढ़िया मेरे हिसाब से इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी है, जिसको अगर आप ले रहे हैं तो IPO में लिस्टिंग गेन के लिए ना लें, उसको लॉन्ग टर्म अपने पोर्टफोलियो के लिए लें।
Again, you said it's an excellent investment opportunity. Earlier, the valuation was supposed to be to the tune of 40,000 crore rupees for the IPO, but now it has been brought down to 21,000. So that is a limitation when it comes to the retail investors. That, you know, instead of investing for 40,000 crore, they are now going to be investing or bidding for 21,000 crore rupees. And also, what about the price band? The overall pricing seems to be better than what was initially envisaged. This is what the market is saying.
Yes, of course. If you look at some of the other indicators like a grey market, I mean, those are not the things one would talk about it in a program like this. They are indicating, and also experts are indicating, that it's a very reasonably priced. My sense, Rajesh, is that the government is, taking cues from the last big IPO that the government did, which was the Coal India, and was successful. Now, the key thing, Rajesh, is, of course, I mean, experts would tell you better, that you need to keep something on the table for everybody. Now, this IPO seems to be indicating that it's been, packaged in a way that it seems reasonable, pricing is reasonable, access is reasonable, everything is reasonable. Rajesh, it's not just about from the government side, it's not just about raising money, it's also signaling event. You're signaling that you can do disinvestment. It's a prickly sort of area. It's one of the largest financial institutions. I mean, can you even dream about this thing happening 10 years back? You cannot even conceive it. So in terms of, because if you do this well, then there are banks waiting, there are other things waiting. So in the reforms path, in the reforms expressway, this is so much more important. It's not just about money, it's just about whether you can do it or not. So it's also a confidence thing that we can do it, and despite all the global ups and downs, you're doing it and you're doing it well. It's much more than it's a large IPO, and there's no doubt about it. There's excitement, but there's so much more than that.
यानी केवल IPO नहीं है, बल्कि ये एक रणनीतिक दूरगामी कदम हो सकता है, जिसके परिणाम हमें आने वाले दिनों में भी देख सकते हैं। इसके परिणामों को देखकर आइए अब चलें शेयर बाजार की ओर। घरेलू शेयर बाजार और आर्थिक कारोबार आज सार्वजनिक अवकाश के कारण बंद हैं। नजर डालेंगे हम वैश्विक बाजारों पर। सबसे पहले एशियाई शेयर बाजार, जहां प्रमुख शेयर बाजार आज सार्वजनिक अवकाश के कारण बंद हैं। दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी निवेशकों की बिकवाली के कारण 0.3% घाटे के साथ आज बंद हुआ, जबकि लिवाली की जाने से हांगकांग के हिंगसेंग में 0.1% की वृद्धि हुई। यूरोपीय शेयर बाजार पर ध्यान दें तो समाचार तैयार किए जाने तक वहां मिला जुला रुख बना हुआ था। अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में लंदन का FTSE 100 0.3% नीचे चल रहा था। फ्रांस का CAC 40 0.9% की बढ़त में था और जर्मनी का डेक्स भी 0.6% ऊपर कारोबार कर रहा था।
Main U.S. stock indices closed higher yesterday as investors bought technology shares in the last hour due to attractive valuations ahead of this week's Federal Reserve meeting. The Dow Jones Industrial Average Index added 0.3%, the S&P 500 climbed 0.6%, and the Nasdaq Composite surged 1.6%. Within 3 o'clock we discussed about whether 25 or 50, and you said the market has already factored in Perhaps it has already factored in the 50 basis point. So if that be the case, how will India be affected by this?
I don't think it's going to come as a surprise. What will be a surprise would be if it is not 50 but it is lower. But Rajesh, as I was mentioning to you at 3 p.m. today, the key part is what are they going to say about their balance sheet? They have been buying mortgage-backed securities and government securities left, right, center. It's huge amounts. I don't think ever it was done. It has been done in the past. Now the idea is to shrink that balance sheet. They'll stopping purchases or reducing it. What are they going to do? Because that is going to indicate how aggressive the Federal Reserve is going to be. So first, the bond markets are going to react, then your stock markets almost immediately are going to react. If they think that it's indicating the intent or the action and also the commentary, if it looks aggressive, that means people are going to be that much, they're going to change their investment strategies, they're going to pivot a little bit more. So if it is more, it signals more aggression, then possibly you would see some kind of a reaction happening in the market. It will also indicate what Federal Reserve thinks, because people say that it's behind the curve as far as containing inflation is concerned. Now the question is, how much behind the curve does it actually think? Because that's why you're tightening. When will you be tightening it more? That when you'll be doing that when you think that, I need to do it very urgently because I'm lagging behind. So those are the signals that I think that the market is going to be looking at.
So what cues will India take from this?
I think what's going to happen is from there, the global managers, money managers, fund managers are going to start reallocating the funds to various markets, and they'll see who's better priced and who's not, and they'll reallocate across asset classes. It could be equities, bond, gold. You would probably, if it's more aggressive, then you would probably see bond yields, at least in the US, it's crossed 3%. It'll go up for, I think, the 10-year sort of yield. So you'll find those things actually happening. So I think the key part is they're going to look at what is the commentary, what is being said about the quantitative tightening. Before the term was quantitative easing. Now it's going to be quantitative tightening. Now QT, what are they going to say about QT? I'm very sure that people are going to pore over it. If it's not there explicitly, it'll be there somewhere in the commentary.
Liquidity is still an issue?
Liquidity is not an issue anymore. It's not. The question is, what are you going to be doing about it? The interesting part, Rajesh, is while the U.S. economy has contracted, the quarter GDP has contracted by 1.4%, but the consumer sentiments are still okay. Labor unemployment is still going down. People are still taking jobs. It's quite interesting. So there's a chance that the Federal Reserve might be emboldened to say, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to wait. We're keeping the powder dry. So it is a fairly important, possibly is one of the most important meetings of this year.
So in the given scenario, how will oil be behaving? Before you answer, let me give you some figures. They fell more than 0.5% today, oil prices, and in the intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $107 per barrel, while the WTI crude prices were at $104.20 per barrel.
Rajesh, two things would be operating in the next 24, 48 hours, or maybe some more hours more. Number one is what is the kind of news that's coming from China, the lockdown, and whether there are going to be EU sanctions, oil sanctions on Russia.
Okay.
आइए चलें सर्राफा बाजार। घरेलू सर्राफा बाजार आज बंद हैं, लेकिन न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में सोना कमजोर होकर $1,853.50 प्रति औंस पर आ गया। वहीं चांदी थोड़ी सी मजबूत हुई, $22.60 प्रति औंस के स्तर पर पहुंच गई। और बस यहीं पर श्रोताओं की ओर से उदयन, हम आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहेंगे।
धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Udayan, for being with us. And before we close the headlines once again, Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds delegation-level talks with his Danish counterpart Mette Frederiksen in Copenhagen, ink several agreements. LIC to launch its IPO for general public tomorrow. Asian and European stocks trade mixed, US stocks log gains, and Brent crude prices hover around $107 a barrel. That's all we have in this edition of Market Mantra. Till tomorrow, goodbye.